Look at a map and find Singapore. A red dot smaller than an average city, right on the equator. No oil beneath it, no rivers, no ore. Its drinking water lasts a couple of days. Let the neighbor across the strait shut one pipe, and the city counts its reserves by the hour. By every textbook, it should have stayed a poor fishing harbor. It went the other way. One of the most expensive ports on the planet, every 10th microchip in the world, and land held below the waves by pumps that cannot be switched off for a single day. Almost everything that feeds the island is hidden underground, underwater, and behind dams, where no tourist looks. Today we break down how it works, to the last ton of concrete and the last date. This is Loudium. Subscribe if you like a great construction project shown honestly, not in slogans. Start with a place not on the old maps at all. The northeastern corner, Pulau Tekong. In September of 2025, they finished something no one in Asia had done. 810 hectares of land lying below sea level. Not heaped above the waves as usual, but lowered into a basin behind a dam almost 10 kilometers long. Inside are 45 kilometers of drainage canals, a storage pond, and 2 pump stations that push water out around the clock. Stop them, and within days, this is seabed again. Such land is called a polder. In the Netherlands, people have lived this way for 1,000 years. Singapore built the first in the tropics, where one downpour dumps as much water as Northern Europe collects in a month. Why crawl below the ocean at all? The reason is simple and unpleasant. Land is needed, and the usual material for it is gone. Since independence in 1965, the island has grown by almost a quarter, hundreds of square kilometers raised from the seabed and filled with sand. So much was used that over 20 years, Singapore imported hundreds of millions of tons and became the largest sand importer on the planet, buying from its neighbors. In Indonesia, by ecologists' counts, more than 24 small islands vanished underwater from export mining, simply dug away. Then the bans came. Indonesia closed exports in 2007, Cambodia in the second half of the 2010s, Malaysia in 2019. Sand was running out, and the Tekong polder is largely the answer to what to do when there's nothing left to pour. It needs almost half as much sand as a classic landfill. You make new land 2 ways: level your own mountain or bring in someone else's sand. Singapore has no mountains. Its highest point, Bukit Timah Hill, is just over 160 meters, and no one will let anyone touch it. So it must be marine sand. Rivers can't supply enough, and every new hectare means barges from somewhere else. And reclaimed land here is no abstraction off in a corner. Whole pieces of familiar Singapore stand on filled ground. Industrial Jurong, the eastern residential districts, the strips along Changi Airport. Even Changi's new Terminal 5 is rising on land taken from the sea. Much of what a tourist takes for the island's native ground is in fact an engineered structure with a construction date. The project was not run by Singaporeans alone. The Dutch Institute Deltares worked out the concept. Boskalis built the dam with Japan's Penta Ocean. Royal Haskoning DHV and the local Serbana Jurong helped. And the client was the housing board HDB, which houses most Singaporeans. The dam was built with a wild margin, against a wave that overtops once in 100,000 years, a storm rarer than writing itself. And that is not overcaution for a pretty figure, but a direct consequence of the island's second great weakness: water. Dozens of sensors watch the water level in the Tekong Basin, and the pump station must react faster than a tropical downpour. The engineers don't hide it. This is not a monument, but a machine on permanent duty. Cut the power for long, and 800 hectares begin to fill. So the station has backup power, A piece of the country now hangs on uninterrupted pumps like an elevator on its cable. Singapore has no rivers you could call a source. For decades, its drinking water came by pipe from the Malaysian state of Johor. The treaty was signed back in 1962, and the water runs at an almost laughable price, 3 Singapore cents per 1,000 gallons, but the paper expires in the year 2061. After that, Malaysia is obliged to sell nothing. The island's entire water policy turns around that date, and it pushed Singapore into something that makes many people flinch: drinking its own sewage. It sounds like a sentence. It works like insurance. Beneath the city runs a system few imagine while flushing a toilet. Deep collector tunnels, 30 to 55 meters down below almost every metro line. The first stage, nearly 50 kilometers long, opened in 2008. The second, almost another 100 kilometers of tunnels and pipes, was closed off by the end of the 2020s. Together, more than 200 kilometers. The sewage rolls by gravity across the whole island to huge plants, where it is driven through membranes, reverse osmosis, and ultraviolet. What comes out is cleaner than tap water. They called it NEWater. The first plant opened in 2003. Today there are 5, and recycled water covers about a third of the country's demand. Here, honesty is needed, because NEWater is wrapped in myths. The claim that the whole country drinks its sewage from the tap is a strong oversimplification. Most of the purified water goes to industry, and only a small share is blended into reservoirs, where it mixes again with rainwater and gets normal treatment. But the essence stands. The island closed its water on itself. They did not dig by hand. Tunnel boring machines nearly 5 meters across, kin to those that cut metros under megacities, ground through the earth. Black and Veatch and AECOM designed it. Ed Zublin and Penta Ocean did the work. The system was built for 100 years. Both stages cost about 10 billion Singapore dollars. By 2060, they expect recycled water to cover more than half of demand. The water insurance has a front side too. Catch the rain before it runs to the sea. In the center, where a river met the bay, they blocked the throat of the bay with a dam 350 meters long. Construction began in 2005, it opened in 2008, and it cost about 226 million Singapore dollars. The idea belonged to first Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew more than 20 years before the build. In the dam are 9 steel gates and 7 giant pumps. When a downpour meets high tide and water can't drain by itself, they push it out to sea and spare the center from flooding. Cut off from salt water, the bay in the heart of the megacity freshened with rain within a couple of years and became the country's 15th reservoir. One structure: drinking water, flood defense, and an evening waterfront. With garbage, the island has the same trouble as with land: nowhere to put it. So the dump was sent out to sea. On the 1st of April 1999, a couple of dozen kilometers offshore, they opened Semakau, the world's first landfill built entirely on space reclaimed from the sea. Between 2 islets, they ran a rock dam 7 kilometers long and lined the floor and walls with a dense membrane so nothing seeps out. Divers laid part of the film underwater. And they don't haul garbage there. It is first burned on the mainland, and only the ash goes to Semakau, about 2,500 tons a day. Cell by cell, they fill it, cover it with soil, and plant it. The garbage isn't burned just anyhow. Several waste-to-energy plants turn refuse into electricity and shrink its volume by about 90%. Out of a mountain, only a handful of ash remains, and that is what goes on to the barges. The island is remembered for one paradox. Life took hold on the ash. Hundreds of coral colonies settled around the dam, mangroves rose along the shores, more than 80 species of birds fly in. A dump that looks no different from a nature reserve. Only this paradise has a meter. Semakau's capacity is a little over 60 million cubic meters, and by the ministry's official answer in the autumn of 2025,
At current rates, it fills up by the mid-30s. What will replace it, the country is deciding right now, with no ready answer yet.
While it's 35 degrees up top and the concrete radiates heat, a cold plant hides under the business district. The world's largest underground district cooling system has run in Marina Bay since 2006. At night, when electricity is cheaper, the units freeze ice and chilled water in huge tanks. By day, that cold spreads through pipes under the streets to the quarters towers, more than 24, including the famous hotel with the ship-shaped pool on top. No skyscraper needs its own chillers. One underground refrigerator serves them all, cutting cooling energy by up to 40%. The pipes run through a separate utility tunnel about 4 kilometers long, dug specially beneath the quarter. The same cold network was built into the new Punggol Digital District across the island, with pipes nearly 5 kilometers long designed in from the start. Next, the thing that secretly makes half the world depend on this dot. Singapore has not a drop of its own oil. Yet for decades, it has stayed among the top 3 refining centers and remains the planet's leading bunkering port. The refueling of ships. In 2024, almost 55 million tons were pumped into tankers here. Rotterdam, its nearest European rival, does around 10 million. So the usual 3 times Rotterdam undersells it. The gap is closer to 5 or 6 times. And this port is now moving in its entirety. On the same western tip, in Tuas, they are building one giant terminal to gather all the city's cargo berths there by the 40s. When finished, it will be the largest fully automated container port in the world. Cranes without operators, carrier platforms without drivers, a control room instead of a crowd of dockers. Its designed capacity is about 65 million containers a year, nearly double the current one. Land is being reclaimed for it again, with all the sand caveats. It opens in stages from the late 2020s, and the old downtown berths will be given over to housing and waterfronts. A rare case of a port yielding to the city, not the other way around. The petrochemicals were gathered onto the artificial Jurong Island, molded from 7 small islets. There wasn't even enough land there, so part of the stock went underground. Beneath Jurong, at a depth of 150 meters, storage caverns were carved into the rock, the first of their kind in Southeast Asia. 5 halls as tall as a 9-story building hold almost 1.5 million cubic meters of oil and condensate, and free up about 60 hectares of hugely expensive land above. One phase cost almost $1 billion Singapore dollars. Mentally lift off the top layer, and a second city appears, hidden in rock and soil. Cooling pipes under the business district, a 200-kilometer web of sewage super tunnels under the whole territory, oil halls as tall as houses under Jurong. Even the army's ammunition moved underground to free hundreds of hectares up top. The flip side of the same paradox, an island without a single mine makes roughly every 10th microchip in the world, and turns out about 1/5 of all the equipment for making them. The official estimate of the local Economic Development Agency. Over the last few years, more than $30 billion have been poured into the industry here. A piece of land with no raw materials turned out to be a node, without which all of global electronics stumbles. Recall the pandemic shortage, when missing microchips halted car plants worldwide. Many of those chips and their tools came from here. Global giants from America's Micron to global foundries keep production on the island and keep laying new billion-dollar plants, because politically, Singapore is seen as a quiet harbor between the big players. Garbage has a second unexpected chapter. In Singapore's new districts, you won't see a garbage truck. Waste drops from apartments into shafts, where a vacuum drives it through underground pipes at almost 40 meters per second to a closed collection station. The first older estate to get such a system was Yuhua. In 2015, the pipes were run to more than 3,000 apartments,
For big new developments, it is now effectively mandatory. And it's not only about cleanliness. By the estimate of the then head of the Housing Board, Dr. Chong Kun-hien, the vacuum system cuts the labor for this work by about 70%. So they hid not only the dirt, but those who carry it out. And a caveat, without which it would be untrue. Not the whole city lives this way, only certain districts and new builds. In old buildings, garbage is still hauled by ordinary trucks. The most visible symbol stands not among the skyscrapers, but in a working-class district. Pinnacle at Duxton. 7 towers of 50 floors, stitched at the top by 2 garden bridges 500 meters long on the 26th and 50th floors. The tallest public housing in the world. Not luxury, but government flats handed out under the ordinary housing program. Cheap tower blocks from the 60s once stood here. In 2001, an international competition drew 227 entries from more than 30 countries. The local firm ARC Studio won, architects Ku Peng Beng and Belinda Huang with the Skyville design. Construction began in April of 2005, was handed over on the 13th of December 2009, and came to 279 million Singapore dollars. It was assembled like a kit, most panels cast at a factory, and the top bridges sections, the heaviest at over 350 tons, lifted and joined at height. Today, anyone is led on to the top bridge. Entry costs about $6, and the flats inside resell for more than $1.5 million. And the dark note competitors usually skirt. These towers, like almost everything on the island, were raised by the hands of newcomers. Hundreds of thousands of workers from India, Bangladesh, China. They live not in rooftop gardens, but in dormitories on the outskirts. How cramped the world saw in 2020. It was through these dormitories that an epidemic outbreak tore, and the authorities tightened standards after the fact. Meters per person, ventilation, people per room, with a deadline to fix the old dormitories by 2030. The showcase of the future stands on the labor of people almost invisible in that future. Everything before this is separate tricks. On the western tip, they are now sewing them into one organism. Tuas, Nexus. The point, for the first time in the world, is to bring sewage treatment and waste processing under one management so they feed each other. The incineration plant gives heat and current to the treatment works, while sludge and food waste ferment into gas that is burned again for energy. On paper, the pairing is energy self-sufficient and even sends surplus to the grid. The treatment side is designed for 800 million liters of sewage a day, one of the largest membrane plants of its kind in the world. The waste side will take nearly 6,000 tons of refuse a day. Construction began around 2020, opening in parts in the second half of the 2020s. By calculation, the closed loop will cut emissions by about 200,000 tons of carbon dioxide a year. And now the most fantastic, and the most unfinished. There is almost nowhere to put solar panels on the island, so they decided to import the sun. The Sun Cable project set out to pull electricity from a huge solar farm in northern Australia to Singapore along an undersea cable about 4,300 kilometers long, the longest power cable in the world. It was announced in 2019. In early 2023, the company went bankrupt. Its 2 main investors, both Australian billionaires, fell out, and the project was nearly buried. That spring, a structure of one of them, Mike Cannon-Brookes, bought it. By the end of 2024, the key permits came together. Australian environmental approval and a Singapore one to import about 1.7 gigawatts from roughly the mid-2030s. The final decision on the money is expected closer to 2027. The cable is not laid yet, so it's more honest to say they intend to pull it than that they already are. A build of the future, held up for now by permits and promises. And here is where all the threads meet. 2 clocks are ticking over the island. The first is sea level. About 30% of the land lies below 5 meters above the water, and by the national climate forecast, the sea could rise by more than a meter by the end of the century, and with storm surge and tide noticeably higher.
In 2019, Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong said in a much-quoted line that defending against the sea would cost about $100 billion over a century and must be treated as a matter of life and death. A separate fund was set up. The minimum platform level for new builds was raised long ago, and in the east, they are designing a whole protective strip of land before the coast. It already has a name, Long Island. Along the eastern shore, they want to reclaim about 800 hectares in 3 sections that will at once be a barrier against the storm sea, a new freshwater reservoir, and land for future districts. From the same sea that threatens the island, they again mean to take land. The second clock is that same water date, 2061. By the time the treaty with Malaysia expires, the country must have everything ready: recycled water, desalination, harvested rain. 5 desalination plants already run. The last opened in 2022, right on oil-bearing Jurong. The goal is that by 61, recycled water and desalination cover up to 85% of demand, so the pipe from Johor stops being a question of survival. Step back, and the whole mosaic folds into one thought. Singapore did not win the resource lottery. It had almost nothing, and it forged its own weaknesses into engineering. It lacked water, so it drinks its sewage and catches every rain. It lacked land, so it lowered land below the sea and moved warehouses under rock. It sweltered, so it learned to freeze itself at night. All of it holds as long as the pumps on Tekong turn, the barges of ash reach Semakau, and the treatment plants don't stall. The island lives exactly as long as it keeps finishing building itself every day. Perhaps the most honest lesson engineering can give every coastal city whose water is already climbing to the threshold. Singapore conquered neither the sea, nor the heat, nor the thirst. It simply learned to negotiate with them every day, with pumps, tunnels, and ash that became an island. And as long as that machine doesn't stop, the island has something to teach, long before the water reaches our own threshold. This was Loudium.